可以坐低，唔該，我哋而家係開，唔該，我哋。
Let's resume our meeting. We're now on Chapter 4. Mr. Kenneth Leung is our main spokesman in this public hearing. So he'll lead us in this discussion on Chapter 4. Mr. Kenneth Leung will make some introductory remarks, and then we'll finish at around 5:30. I don't think we can finish today, actually. On the 15th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., we'll have another meeting. Is this all right with you? I think you have been consulted. CAD? Okay for you? Bureau Director, I don't think you need to come because our discussion will focus on the contract. I think the Bureau Director is too busy to come. So just send your assistants. So, Mr. Leung, Chapter 4. Thank you, Chairman. Chapter 4 covers a number of topics, mainly on the ATC system, the air traffic control system, which is very important to aircraft safety. This ATC system, according to certain statistics, at the end of 2012, it has reached the end of its lifespan. That is, it's saturated. It's time to replace it.
And in 2007, the CAD obtained $1.5 billion for the replacement of the ATC system. If you refer to page 13 of the report, well, there are 8 contracts for this system. If you refer to table 1, there are 8 contracts. And what's most important is A, Air Traffic Management System, and B, Air Traffic Services Data Management System. And they account for a high percentage of the total of the contract sum. This is Table 1 in page 8. And on the 2nd of February 2011, the contract started. You'll find this in Table 3. On page 14, I now want to refer to Contract A, that is Air Traffic Management System, ATMS. In Table 3, I see that there are a lot of delays at the different milestones. You see that the target date of completion is different from the actual date. Say, for example, on the 20th of October 2013, that is in relation to integration, it should have completed. However, it hasn't even commenced. That is 20th December 2013. And in the third milestone, there was a serious delay. That is submission of detailed design document for government's approval. The target date of completion was the 10th of August 2011. However, for this milestone, the actual date of completion was 7th of December 2011. So a 4-month delay. And this is just in relation to the detailed design. I'd like to know, well, I see that in 2.6, paragraph 2.6, that there was an explanation about the delay. But I'd like to know, in relation to this delay, is it something to do with the supplier or on the part of government department? DG, please stay close to the microphone. I will defer to the Deputy DG. Thank you. About the delay of detailed design, I would like to say that the ATC or the ATC system is very complicated, involving development and design of many programs, and also there are requirements in relation to human-machine interface. Operation staff, engineers, and the contractors have to sit together to discuss the details. We would like to refine the details at the design stage so that the end product, that is the system, would meet our requirements. As a result, it's taken a few months longer than originally planned. Well, the third part wasn't answered. The second part was answered. So it was only a delay of a few days. So can you tell me about the delay of 4 months? If you're talking about complexity in the design, but for a professional team, they are all foreseen. Say, for example, if you ask Mr. Alan Leung how long it would take you to give me a legal advice, and if it's a complicated matter, maybe a few days more. If it's something simple, just 2 or 3 days. How come that you did not, or you could not foresee this at the early stage? We're talking about a professional team. Mr. Lee? Well, I've given you the crux of the problem. We gave the requirements or specifications to the contractors, and then they would give us feedback. Say, for example, we're given the preliminary design, and then we gave them the input, and then it was refined and improved, so that in the end, the final design would be acceptable to all, and it would take time. But that's just a normal course of business. Well, if you refer to Table 3, Mr. Leung asked you how come that there was a delay from August 2011 to December 2011. You talked about complexity in design. However, in the second milestone, detailed design review, everything was done before you go into the third milestone. So please focus on the question. It wasn't answered. After we've given our views on the detailed design, the contractor will have to incorporate our views into the design and then submit the same for our approval. The design went back into, and in the end, it was on the 7th of December 2011 when we approved the design. My question was whether it is a delay on the part of the contractor or on the part of the government. Yes, it might have gone back into a few times. You review the first draft, and then you would ask all your comments to be incorporated, unless you have to have a second review, because in the first one it wasn't comprehensive enough. So my question was whether it was the delay on the part of the contractor or on the part of the government in its review. I did not participate. Who did? Ask the one who participated to answer. DG. There was a chief electronic engineer who participated. Perhaps he was too hardworking. He or she was too hardworking. And that engineer had to retire early for health reasons. We're talking about a very complicated system of air traffic control. I know that the team has worked very hard. They work till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I will not accept this answer because we're talking about safety. If an aircraft falls out of the sky, who's to be held responsible? So have you underestimated the time it would take for this process to be completed? If that is the case, then, well, say at the end of 2012, your old system would have reached the end of its usable life, then you should have started your replacement early. I will not find your answer acceptable if you only say that it's about complexity. Who is to answer? Please allow us to give you the actual reason about the delay later. I try to answer, or I try to explain the problem. Mr. Lee, this is a public hearing, and you should have come fully prepared. We've spent a lot of time to read through the report. We asked questions. If you cannot answer our questions, we will not be able to compile our report because we need to complete the report within 3 months. Please do your best to answer us. If you do think that you are unable to answer, well, say so, but you should know why members ask these questions. We find it very difficult to accept if you say you have to give us an answer later. Say for example, there is a technological breakthrough, or the IACO require you to do something that you did not foresee. Then, well, that is excusable, but that is not the situation. You have to give us a true answer. Please refer to the 6th milestone in this table. Submission of site acceptance tests procedures for all equipment for government's approval. Site acceptance tests procedures. So the supplier would give you all the procedures that all these tests will have to be conducted. And that was the target date of completion was the 11th of April 2012. And this is another serious delay because the actual date of completion was the 1st of February 2013, a delay of 10 months. So, same question. Is it a delay on the part of the supplier because they submitted the procedures to you late, or because you've taken a lot longer to go through the tests? Now there is a delay. Can you explain why there was a delay? Don't tell me about the complexity of the project because that was expected. Please, Mr. Lee. Delay in relation to the site acceptance tests procedure. One of the reasons was that there was a change to the requirement. According to the tender condition, the site acceptance test procedures was supposed to be done in accordance with the terms of the tender document. However, when it comes to factory acceptance tests, we found that if we stuck to the tender term, it would not effectively test the performance of the system, and we had to enhance the site acceptance tests procedure, so we changed it to scenario based. This is to test not just the performance of the functionalities. We could use the different scenarios to test different aspects in the system. So the procedures had to be rewritten because the original procedures were a lot simpler. As a result of this, we had to compile a new set of procedures. I still find this unacceptable because you knew scenario-based testing is a better, more comprehensive procedure. Why did you not have it written in the tender document and set aside a few more months? Is it because there was a negligence in the preparation of the tender document? Mr. Lee, we learned from this. When it comes to factory acceptance tests, tests were done and a lot of problems were identified, and we asked the contractor to follow them up. Both the contractor and us wanted to put in place a better set of procedure to ensure the performance of the system was up to standard. When you select a contractor, you had to choose one that is reputable. How come that it was only till factory acceptance tests that you found that the site acceptance tests had to be changed, and that you had to maybe rewrite the software, the programs? But at the time when a contractor was selected, you should have already thought about this, because if 2 or 3 years down the line and the system was not did not meet your requirement, you were stuck. You had a selection panel in the central tender board. Which official was responsible for the selection of the contractor? So this ATC system, was there a monopoly in the market, or there were actually a lot of suppliers to choose from? What criteria did you use in your selection? There aren't many such suppliers in the world, but there are a number of big ones, some from the US, some from Europe, some from Spain. And at the time of the tender, it was an open tender. We only specified our requirements, and suppliers made proposals in accordance with our specifications. So the reason you chose this particular contractor, was it because it was cheap, or was it because you thought they would deliver on time? So what was the criteria you used? But if it was an open tender, I believe several suppliers put in their proposal. So can you tell us, based on what did you think that this particular supplier was superior to others? Can you maybe take us through the tendering process? Deputy Secretary, is it done by the Central Tender Board or is it done by them? In the end, it was the department who did it. And at the last stage, it had to be approved by the Central Tender Board in December 2010. It went through the Central Tender Board asking for an approval. I would defer to Mr. Lee about the tender process and the scoring system. So let's start from afresh. How it went through the Central Tender Board, how a supplier was selected. Let's retrace our steps to find out what happened. Because if we cut in the middle, then we would not be clear about the situation. And Deputy Secretary, if you would like to supplement, maybe you can interject. Perhaps we could do a round before we finish for the day.
Lee Sang.
Yes, Mr. Lee. May I briefly explain about the procurement procedure, how we selected this contractor? We follow strictly the government's procurement and logistics regulation and also the international agreement. And we had an open tender and we received 5 tender proposals, and in the tender document we set out very clearly the assessment criteria, and that there were 2 aspects, one being technical, the other being pricing. We did the assessment on technical aspects first, and we went through several stages. Having completed that, we opened the envelope on pricing and the scores, and the total score after adding up the 2 the total score would be summed up, and then the tenderer getting the highest score would win the bid. Before the tender exercise, a tender assessment board will be set up in advance, comprising 11 members, including some experienced air traffic control personnel, engineers responsible for the tender document. You're responsible for the second envelope, is that right? Chairman, on technical assessment and on pricing assessment, both were done by the department. Having awarded score on a technical aspect, the pricing envelope would be opened and another score would be given. The summation of the 2 would become the total score, and based on the total score, the winning bidder would be selected. That means the one submitting the lowest bid will usually, as far as technical assessment is concerned, the scoring is usually similar. The only difference would be pricing. Now, on technical and pricing assessment, weights would be given to the 2 aspects. Well, what is the ratio? Technical aspect accounts for 40%. well, about your system and your tendering process, well, why don't you give us something in writing later? Just explain to us this 2.6, and well, let's wait for the paper and then we'll let other members ask their questions first. Mr. Raymond Wong. This audit report number 63 has 10 chapters. CAD accounts for 2 chapters, 2 major incidents. We haven't finished with the CAD headquarters, and now we're talking about the ATC system. Last year, media reports already revealed in the headline news the scandals surrounding the CAD. $1.5 billion plus for updating the ATC system. In the end, the system couldn't be used. So just to put things in context, I'd like everyone to know the problems first before we boil down to the details, where the money was spent, etc. Now, from the value for money perspective, the Audit Commission's stance was clear. The system only existed in name. It could not be operated in time and administratively. Very clearly, the CAD committed an error. I don't know. Let's refer to the tender document. If the system contractor delayed in delivering the system, then the department had a right to terminate this contract or even have it replaced. Some newspapers said that you could have pursued $8 million compensation from them, and yet you failed to do so, and with so many errors in the system, instead of seeking compensation from them, you paid extra. You paid $89 million to rectify the mistakes. It's hard to accept this. You could have terminated this contract. You could have even asked for compensation instead, or damages. Instead, you paid $90 million to rectify the mistakes. So it's very serious. In this audit report, Chapter 4, Administration of the Air Traffic Control and Related Services. In the introduction, 7 recommendations were put forward, and the Director General of CAD should do so and so. This is just the usual practice of the audit. In fact, instead of recommendations, these are the 9 faults committed by the DG of CAD. For example, to rectify rectify the outstanding deficiencies or observations in the ATMS and closely monitor the remaining contract work, etc. That means deficiencies. There are several hundred deficiencies, not just several dozen. So we can question whether the system is safe. There could be a major problem with the system's safety. Of course, your solution is to pay more money to rectify the mistakes. So, but from the value for money perspective, how would you spend so much public money resulting in such a long delay of several years? And instead of pursuing the contractor, you paid $90 million in addition. I want the FSTB to give me an answer. Is this fiscal prudence? Isn't it problematic from the perspective of value for money? Secretary. Chairman, we gave policy support for replacement of this system. But in terms of procurement and implementation of the system, did we just casually dish out money to the contractor, or were there other problems? I think we need a more detailed explanation from our colleagues. Well, just now, I asked whether it was possible to terminate the contract or to seek damages. Director. Chairman, the department in charge was responsible for the contract, and the tender process was also under the charge of the relevant department. I understand that legal advice had been sought. DG. Chairman, this system is very complex. Other air traffic management providers across the world would often experience delays in the whilst they replace the existing ATC system. Recently, in an Asian country, there was a delay of more than 3 years when they replaced the existing system. Similarly, in Europe, another jurisdiction also had a delay of 6 years when the old system was replaced. I'm not trying to put up excuses for the CAD in this matter, but if we just arbitrarily terminated the contract, then what would be our next step? So your explanation is that the system is very complex, very scientific, etc. So we could do nothing but to put up with it, simply put, bear with it, no alternative, $90 million more to enhance the system. So another point of not having alternative. I don't think this is justified. Of course, if we have a good system, there could still be deficiencies or errors. We agree that zero error is impossible, but we're talking about several hundred deficiencies. With the use of so much public money and the system only exists in name, and you tell us that that also happened in an Asian country. Well, there is corruption in the airport in Thailand. So can you really compare the two? You need to protect our public money. How the government uses our public money. Well, we did consider the issue of claiming damages. We asked only for $8 million. Had we increased the amount, the pursuable amount, then ultimately this would be reflected in the tender price. And in developing our existing ATC system or ATMS system, we experienced something similar. And the system was also developed by the same supplier. And every year we had, we went through an enhancement process. In such a complex system, it is not uncommon to see delays, but the top priority of the CAD is to ensure aviation safety. So if we accept this system, we must make sure that this system can run safely. And our major task now is to work with the contractor in resolving the deficiencies identified, so that we can take over the system and perform integration as soon as possible. That is to link all the secondary systems to this major system, and then we'll also do another round of testing before accepting the system. So once the system is accepted, it means that the system is safe and stable. After that, we'll also train our air traffic control officers and they would need to go through a management safe management assessment system. Chairman, I won't pursue any further on this because from a value for money perspective, we're being fooled. Well, I'll ask another point, and then I will ask Mr. Leung to ask another question. On para 2.6 and 2.8, the contract was amended, first of all, to include the ICAO requirements such as adequate air traffic management contingency arrangements, and also enhancing the aircraft arrival sequence logic and human-machine interface. Were these new developments in after 2009, back when the project was tendered in 2009, why weren't these new developments anticipated? Yes, when the contract was first amended, because the whole tendering process was quite long, in 2009, we invited tenders. The contract was awarded in 2011. The contract was amended in 2012. In these several years, there have been new developments. On these new developments, and as the airport's operation and the air flight region had continued to change, and in fact, now once every 2 years, we have to make changes anyway to tie in with the airport's operation. So due to actual operational needs, we proposed amendments to the contract, and we also provided justifications for approval by the GLD. In para 2.7 bracket C, it talks about the training for using the new system, and the training period was longer than expected. So how long are we talking about here, Mr. Lee? I can't give you a time frame. Originally, the simulator system for training served 2 functions, one of which was to train our air traffic controllers. The other was for our system developers to do evaluation. And seeing that air traffic has increased substantially in the PRD region, there is an increase in the demand of air traffic control. And we would like to see that training and evaluation could be carried out at the same time. That's because you have increased the complexity of the training system, and this is a mistake on your part. Isn't the system used by any other countries in the world? Don't they have the experience? You can draw reference from others. That shows you have underestimated the difficulty of the new system, and is a negligence on your part. In para 2.9, because of the new requirements of the ICAO Global Air Navigation Plan, in June 2013, on the CAD's request, the GLD amended the contract, or varied the contract. It was approved in November 2011. And what about this occasion? The next variation took place in June 2013. It was approved. Or when was it actually approved, Mr. Lee? In 2012, the ICAO held a global Air Navigation Conference. In the conference, the GANP, the Global Air Navigation Plan, was formulated, which included advanced system technologies for countries were required to develop these new technologies. And as a result, in 2012, some of these requirements were included in the second contract variation. 2.13, 2.14 factory acceptance tests and site acceptance tests. Factory acceptance tests were due for completion on 18 July 2012. However, during the tests conducted between June 18th and July 18th, 2012, a total of 204 deficiencies observations were recorded, which fell short of the CAD's expectation. I want to know whether the 204 deficiencies or observations were far more than those normally recorded. Why is it that the contractor could, the system developed by the contractor could result in 204 deficiencies or observations?
Director General, during the factory acceptance tests, we detected 204 deficiencies or observations that had to be rectified. That's not really very serious. Most of them were caused by the software. In that process, within a rather short period of time, they rectified the deficiencies or observations. As for tendering, how we carried out assessment, I'll defer to Mr. Wu. Mr. Wu? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the question. Just now it was explained how the overall tender documents and the tender exercise were handled. There was a scoring system. We appointed experienced personnel and colleagues to carry out the assessment. They observed the procedures formulated by the Government Logistics Department, that is the two-envelope system as mentioned. There was a suitable check and balance in that process. Mr. Alan Leong, in fact, these questions are to prepare the CAD for the next session of this hearing. We would like them to be better prepared. If you ask me what expectations do members of the public have for the CAD, well, members of the public would like to have safe, efficient, and sustainable aviation systems, air aviation systems. In the year 2000, they obtained $140 million for the surveillance radar system. At that time, they said that with that radar system, the two runways could operate independently. We spent over $100 million. But then after 4 years, they dropped the system. That's already silly enough. Well, the DGCA and the relevant officials, you should look back at the undertakings and statements that you made at the time when you came for FC approval for funding. Next time when you come, we'll follow up on those remarks of yours when you come again. What about the $1.56 billion? Perhaps the Secretariat can dig out the electrical papers for us. The first time they came to the Economic Affairs panel, and that was on the 26th of February 2007. At that meeting, many councillors asked them a lot of questions. There were a lot of appendices to those papers. You can refer to R63/3 info or info 1, just one. Next time, they won't have the chance to read those documents at the meeting. So before the next public hearing, we'll pose our questions in advance. So next time when you come, don't tell us that you're not prepared. On page 4, paragraph 14, the task force was mentioned. The task force was not just responsible for constructing the new CAD headquarters. It's also mentioned that it's responsible for the ATM system. That is the one costing $1.56 billion plus. It's R63/3/info 5. That was published on the 11th of May 2011 under head 708, non-recurrent allocation for the replacement of the ATM system of the CAD. So that was for the 11th of May 2007. And they affirmed once again the information they submitted to the Economic Development Panel on the 26th of February. May I refer you to Appendix D of that paper to the Economic Development Panel. They actually tabulated information for every year. So the LegCo actually expected the ATM system to be implemented in phase. So next time, I would like to have a detailed comparison table for this Appendix B, so as to find out where the errors were and why. Because those who fly in aircraft may be worried. We're talking about value for money, and the sum involved is not small, over $1.56 billion. Now, for Appendix D, there's this Assistant Director General for the CAD is for the new ATM system, and there's a duty list. If you read the minutes, the DGCA said that that's a very important system. He said that the system being used back then was old and designed in 1990, and there were intermittent breakdowns. Well, it said that the new system would be commissioned in December 2012, but now there's already a slippage of 2 years. When will the new system be commissioned? And what about the duty list in this appendix? Any implementation? Where did the errors lie? You have to tell the PAC. And then for Appendix F, air traffic controller, the supervisor, there's also a duty list. If you look at the $1.5 billion in Appendix G, you have the breakdowns. Now, that is the job description for the chief ATM standards. So have you ever deviated from the breakdowns of the job description? For those officials attending public hearings, when you testify, don't just engage in empty talk. You should base your remarks on the papers you submitted to us back then and tell us where the errors lie and why, and which were human errors, which were beyond your expectation, and which were or which couldn't be foreseen reasonably. So I think they should get themselves well prepared before we conduct our next hearing. No problem for all these? No problem. We'll have a meeting on the 15th. Just let us have the papers. If there are no further questions, thank you very much for your hard work. On the 15th at 9 a.m., we'll have a follow-up meeting. DG, Director General, can you briefly tell us the whole tender exercise that led to the award of the contract? Give us a brief report.